The Cattle USA Daily Podcast. Today, we are welcoming back the one, the only John Campbell onto the podcast. John has been someone that has been showing up around our YouTube channel for a really long time, so he's a familiar face to many of our viewers and listeners out there. And today, John and I are talking just the generalities of bringing cattle to the market and what that looks like to consign cattle. Some of John's thoughts and opinions on communication within that and what you need to be doing as livestock producers to make the most out of your consignment. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this episode with John. John, welcome back to the podcast. We are excited to welcome you on for another week. And this week we're talking all things bringing cattle to the sale, and I'm excited about it. How are you? How's life in Colorado?
Well, we got a little moisture, so Colorado is actually in La Junta, where it never rains. We're actually in pretty good shape. There's still some dry spots around, and everybody's praying for a little moisture, but all in all, everybody's posture's pretty good on a moisture-wise and for sure market-wise.
Yes, I think everyone can agree from that standpoint. Some of the rain that's been pummeling through the Midwest recently has been wonderful for a lot of people, especially out in the West. So that is wonderful to hear. Well, are you ready to dive into bringing cattle to the sale barn? I'd love to hear just your thoughts initially on bringing cattle to the sale barn, what it means, the impact that it can have. And we kind of talked about it last week off air, the fact that it is something that isn't taught in school, and it's something that so many producers need to know how to do better, and do better for their operations. So I'd love to hear just kind of your thoughts on that.
Right. You know, as we mentioned, there's fortunes that are gained and lost within just a handful of days before you merchandise your cattle, but it's tough to get your hands on what those are and what the parameters are. And so many producers are really completely unaware of what they're gaining or what they're losing because it's hard to quantitatively measure those things. But just through experience, I would say first and foremost, if you've got an auction guy that you like and that you trust, boy, really lean on his education and his experience, and he can show you a lot of shortcuts that will help you. And, those things are based off how many cattle you've got, where you're located at, how you're feeding the cattle, whether they're weaned, whether they're not weaned. The scenario changes really 180 degrees just based off what you have got to sell. Do you have 100 or do you have 3? My answer to that question would be completely different just based off those things. Communicate with your auction market operator. Tell him what you got. Tell him what you're wanting to accomplish. Ask him what your concerns are. But you have to know the right questions to ask. But more times than not, if you'll listen, he will try. It's to his best advantage and yours as well to merchandise those cattle to the best of his ability because he wants to keep you as a customer. It's a win-win deal. The more he helps you, that makes a repeat customer out of you, and that makes an ambassador for his sale out of that customer. Anyway, I think those are that's probably first and foremost. And we kind of had an outline of things that we want to go through, but number one, first and foremost, as it is in a lot of things, is communication. Call the guy and even if you haven't decided where you're going to sell your cattle, call 4 or 5 of them. Sometimes, we have cattle that come 500 miles to La Junta. Are there other auctions in between here and there? Most definitely, a lot of them. So whoever is the closest may not always be the best for your situation and what you've got. It's just kind of like going to the doctor or going to the hospital. Just because the hospital is local, they may not be the best cancer hospital in the country. Identify, and then you have to weigh those options out. Well, can I afford to take those cattle 500? Maybe not. Maybe you're crazy if you don't. But you need to qualify all of those and establish what that market operator can do for you based on your scenario and your situation. And distance is just one of the factors that you're dealing with. You can pay a lot of freight in the difference in the commission. You know, if you've got somebody charging you 3, 4, 5% at these levels, why, my gosh, you could buy the truck for what your savings at the bottom line. Is 500 miles really a bad deal? Well, no, if it costs me another $30 to get it, but I can stay here locally and it costs me $60 to sell them. I'm a net winner by $30. So there's a lot of those questions that really the market operator can answer for you. And but like I said, you need to know the questions to ask.
Yeah. What are some of those questions that these producers need to be asking themselves or their market operators as they continue to prepare and just sit down and quantify and qualitatively like look at all of this and say, how am I making the best business decision for my operation in these standpoints? Because you and I could sit here all day and we could talk about different things to do, to not to do. But you said it your best earlier of, I could say that it's a terrible idea for one person where it's the best idea for another person. So how does someone sit down and actually figure that out for themselves?
Exactly. And I think a little or a lot of it depends on what you have got to sell, how many you have got to sell. You know, we have some people that think they can justify bringing a trailer load of cattle, 10, 12, 14 head, 300-400 miles to La Junta versus stopping them here or there. Are the cattle weaned? Are they not weaned? You know, how do I recuperate that shrink that's involved in transporting the cattle? So that changes. If I've got 1, 2, 3 head, your local guy 5 miles away, even though it costs more, even though the market is not as good, you know, you can't justify coming that far. And that's why local markets are so important, and you need to support them. So you need to look at that side of it too. Well, if all I ever do is take him all my junk and all my cuts, it's a little hard for him to survive, you know, but he has to be doing the job too in order to justify a bigger consignment of cattle. But the main thing I would say is consign your cattle ahead of time. And that will answer a lot of questions for you. Lauren, how many cattle are you going to have that week? You know, if it's the 5th of July and you're only going to have 85 cattle plus my 60, you probably want to stay away from that. If it's around a holiday, look at the weather. Again, the market operator can answer a lot of those questions, but is my timing right? You know what I mean? To sell your weigh cows a week or 10 days before the Christmas break, because they're going to need volume because everybody's going to be shut down. Is that a good time to sell? Just things like that you can look at that will weigh on your decision. When do I arrive, John? Well, that depends on how far you're coming, the class of cattle that you've got involved. Back to our initial point, I have cattle that come from 400 or 500 miles away that are weaned. Those cattle need to come 3 days ahead of time. I have another guy that has the same cattle that are weaned, but they are 7 miles away. He can do a more adequate job of filling those cattle and prepping them for the sale, where the freight and the haul is only 7, 8 miles. The guy coming 300 miles or 500 miles, he's got to recuperate some weight somehow. And we're not trying to overly fill the cattle, but the thing that we have to sell is hopefully we can get your cattle back to par on your weight. You haul cattle 500 miles, you know, you're going to lose 3% just loading them and unloading them. Plus every 100 miles after that, you're going to lose another percent. So how am I going to recuperate this 7, 8%? Well, you don't do it coming to the sale the night before. And then, you know, so the auction operator can help you with that. Yeah, Lauren, coming that far and our sale is on Tuesday, you need to have those cattle in here Saturday night. If my cattle are unweaned, then how do I handle them? How do I prioritize those things? Distance is just one thing, but how the cattle have been handled. I've got cattle that are very close that are weaned, but they're so cotton picking wild, he's crazy to bring them in 2, 3 days ahead of time because they haven't quit bouncing off the fences in 3 days. And it may be good, may be bad, but for him, he's a lot better off. Those cattle are easily agitated. They're fine. They're good cattle. You buy them, turn them out, you get along fine. But for his bottom line, he is a lot better served to come in the day of the sale. If you have cattle that are close and it looks like we're going to have 10,000 cattle, and you're very concerned about the time of day those cattle sell, you may sacrifice some things in terms of weight, in terms of a lot of things, because you think it's in your best interest to show those cattle a little earlier. And the market operator will tell you that. If he knows that that is really important to you, he may hold you off for a week. Lauren, don't come, because I think the market's going to be good. I think it's going to be great. But if you come in Tuesday at 2 o'clock, it is going to be 7 o'clock at night before you sell. Next week, we're going to have half that many cattle. You can come in on Tuesday and it'll be 4 o'clock when you sell. I'm not a big believer in the time you sell makes a big value determining characteristic as to what they bring, but there are a lot of people that are for their own management style and this and that. That's what they want to do. And same way with grow yard cattle, we get a lot of them in the spring. Well, it's foolish to bring them in 2 days ahead of time, because they're switching rations, they're switching locations. You're not going to gain anything. As it is just as foolish to bring those cattle in at 8 o'clock in the morning when you know they're not going to sell till 4 in the afternoon. Bring them at 2 in the afternoon, already sorted, then the amount of shrink that's involved is a heck of a lot less than having them stand over here, and they're not going to gain any weight. You can do your best job at home because of the close proximity you are to the sale.
Yeah.
Again, full circle, your auction guy can answer that. There's a lot of questions that you need to know the scenario you're coming to before you can make a good decision.
So going back to asking the right questions to your auction manager, we're talking distance, health, the type of animal that you're selling. So whether it is a calf, a cull cow, whatever, amount of animals that you're selling. What else am I missing? Are there any other questions that we need to be asking our auction managers?
Yeah, I think conversations about value that you have added to your program. Ask him, what do you want from me? What are things? I mean, I've had people go into extended stories about the ribeye area of the bull they used. That's all good and fine, but in the priority of things of what adds value to your product, that's probably not very high on the list. Well, it's a big deal to him. It means a lot to him. But when you're merchandising the cattle, talk to the guy that's merchandising them, and he will tell you what things he really needs to know. And are your genetics important? Yes, they most definitely are. How you've handled, how you've vaccinated those cattle, are they important? Yes, they certainly are. Are the cattle weaned? If so, how long? I'll talk to them blue in the face about one that's weaned 60 days. If, Lauren, you tell me, John, they're weaned 21 days, I say, Lauren, let's skip over that and go to the next one. Because I'm not doing you any favors saying your cattle are weaned 21 days because they're really not weaned. You know, I mean, things like that I know, but the next guy that says, well, John, 21 days. I mean, I've always got along great with my calves, you know, weaning them 21 days and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's because you've never experienced loading them, hauling them, putting them in a new facility, and then somebody from eastern Kansas buys them and hauls them another 300 miles. Okay, he doesn't know what the consignor. He has no experience along those lines, and it's not that he's stupid and doesn't know what he's doing, but my gosh, oh Friday, that's a death sentence. You know, and the guy may get along good, but it's not that the guy was trying to sell something he just didn't know. He didn't know. A lot of people think 21 days is great. And depending on where they go and where they come from, it may be fine. But again, you have to qualify it to what you actually have to sell. But that would be the big thing. Talk to your operator about what things can I do to enhance the value of what I've got to sell. And, you know, whether that's weaning, whether that's the health, it varies depending on how many you've got to sell. If you have got 3 cattle and they sell 1, 1, and 1, all of that may go out the window. And it's not right, but it's the way that it is. Lauren, you have one steer, and he is the greatest steer in the United States of America. He's weaned, he's had every shot, he's out of a high-powered bull. He will do it all. But the fact that you only have one trumps all of the effort that you put into it. And don't get me wrong, all those things are important, or that is good. But how you handle that one head or those three head, I may tell you completely different. Lauren, get him in early. We'll try to sell him around 11 o'clock. I'll tell him that he's weaned, that he's this, he's that. But you are going to sell your one head or three head to a completely different discipline than the guy that's got 100 head. And you're doing yourself a disfavor if you think, John, I want my one head to sell at 2 o'clock. Well, the people that are there at 2 o'clock wouldn't buy one head if you give it to them, because they are not going to put a load of 100 head of 500-pound steers together one at a time. They are forbidden by the people on the other end to buy them that way, irregardless of how great your animal is. So you bring that one head in at 10, 11 o'clock, I've got a ring full of guys that love to buy them, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, because that's the nature of their operation. They buy them 3, 2, 5, 7. At the end of the day, they may put 200 of them together, but they've just got a 6-horse trailer or a 6-head trailer. Well, they can't buy 9 because it's 80 miles one way and back, and they're not coming back for 2 more. But they will give more for that convenience of having 1, having 3, having 2, having 4, because it fits their application. Again, full circle, it comes right back to what you've got. And there's a different way to merchandise every one of them based off what you've got to sell.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it all goes back to that communication aspect that we first started this podcast out with.
Exactly.
You have got to call your local auctioneer, your local people that you are working with, that you are consigning with, and you got to communicate with them. And you have to have a really great working relationship with them and be open and honest about your operation. Because, John, from a standpoint of someone who owns and operates a consignment market, it's one of those situations that you need your people to be honest with you. You need them to be open, because at the end of the day, they're not successful. If they're not successful, you're not successful. So it's a mutually beneficial thing across the board, right. But it all goes back to communication.
It does. And there's got to be some hand-holding along there too, because everybody is important. 80%, I would say, of our volume probably comes from consignments of less than 70 head of cattle. So the little guy is crucial to our success. He doesn't have the options that somebody with 500 head have. They have people beating their door down wanting to buy their cattle, but the guy with 3, 5, 17, 25, even 100 head of calves, by the time you steer an heifer and size them 3 ways, the biggest bunch he's got's 13. So that's the lifeblood of our operation. Sure, we like the big deals and we get a lot of them, and we're going to handle them different than we are the guy with 100. So you need to, like you said, communicate with the auction guy, and he'll have the best program, and he can design it specifically for you, for how far away you are, whether your cattle are weaned, whether they're not, how many numbers that you have. Each one of those has a different set of qualifications that how we handle them on this end, once again, is just completely different. I mean, I just got back from southern New Mexico about a month ago, and they are so dry. There's a lot of those people that are contemplating, John, I'm just going to pull them off the cow and send them to you. Well, that's a travesty. Don't do that. And I'd love to have the business, but I'd get it one time. Because you cannot haul those ball and calves 500 miles. We have people that do it, and if we got them in ahead of time, but look at options about where could we stop those cattle along the way, that they can wean them, that they can prep the cattle, that health-wise, weigh-up-wise, we don't know what the market's going to do, but there's other options that you need to explore versus loading the cattle and hauling them 500 miles off the cow. Now, that's the thing about a cow-calf operator. They're dealing in a perishable product. And a lot of those people don't have the luxury. They're in the cow-calf business. They're not in the stocker business. So, do we get some of those? Yeah, we do. And sometimes that's the best option they have. They don't have the whereabouts or the money or the time to stop these cattle somewhere else, wean them, pay a feed bill, go through all the deal, especially look at the market we're looking at now. How much more you want for them? So they still have a value even though they've been hauled 500 miles and sold the next day. Well, you have to weigh that against, what is the risk benefit versus doing it that way versus where I'm at. And we have a lot of people that buyers don't understand. Hey, they gather their cattle out of the mountains 3, 5, 8, 12, 15 at a time. It takes them 3 days to put a load of them together to where they can take them anywhere. Are they wrong? Well, that's what they've had to give up in practicality and doing it right because of the situation that they're in. That's all they can do. So anyway, every scenario is different. But if you're constantly working towards an end result that will benefit you the most, sometimes it costs some money and sometimes it takes years to get there. But if you've got an idea or a goal of where you would like to be that would maximize your return on the cattle, you're foolish not to get as much information to make that decision as you possibly can. And part of that is how you're going to merchandise those cattle.
100%. John, as we round out the podcast, are there any final words, pieces of advice, anything that you'd like to leave with the audience today?
I would say one note that I put here as far as, the animal health goes, buyers a lot of times they're easy to forget about the good ones they bought, and those cattle did great and good this and all that. But I'm just pulling some records here myself of cattle that I had problems with. I'm going to find out whose those were. I mean, you remember the bad deals and you say, I'm not going to repeat that again. So back to how you handle these cattle, how you facilitate the sale of them. Don't think that the buyers don't remember the problems that they've had. And if you can eliminate as many of those and add as much value working with your auction guy as you possibly can, you start to build a reputation, and a reputation is something that you really want when you're merchandising your cattle at public auction.
Yes, 100%. Well, John, I couldn't think of a better way to round out the podcast and our amazing discussion today. I appreciate all of your wisdom and just all of the things that you are bringing to our audience today and everything that goes along with it. So thank you for your time. And to all of our audience members out there, we appreciate you guys listening to another episode of the Cattle USA Daily Podcast. We will see you all tomorrow on another one. Have a good day, y'all.